Welcome to the Critical Frame. This episode, we're going to review The Mask.
And now it's time for some quick facts. The Mask came out in theaters on July 29th, 1994. This movie stars Jim Carrey, Karen Diaz, Peter Green, Peter Reckert, and Amy Yesbeck. And it's also starring Richard Jenny, Ben Stein, Jim Dolhan, Nancy Fish, and Tim Gregory. This movie made a budget of 18 to 23 million. It had grossed over 351 million, which made it the most profitable film based on a comic up to that point. On its opening weekend at the box office, The Mask made 23.1 million. It was a box office hit, grossing 119 million domestically and over 350 million worldwide, becoming the second highest film behind Batman.
Spoiler alert. Ugh.
The Mask starts off with a bank employee by the name of Stanley Ipkiss, who isn't really good with delays. Clearly. Stanley gets a new client by the name of Tina Carlisle, who's really just spying on the bank for her kind of boyfriend Dorian. He and his coworker make plans to go to a club that evening, but unfortunately some mishaps happen. For one, his car breaks down and he has to go to drunk off her ass's mechanics. He isn't able to get into the club, and he has to have a cranky old woman who's his neighbor slash landlord, named Mrs. Peeman. It seems like his only companion is his dog, Milo. Anyway, he ends up taking a walk by the docks and ends up finding the mask. And, brings it home and cleans it up and accidentally puts it on. And he becomes the Mask. After becoming the Mask, Stanley goes off to the drunk off her ass's mechanics and basically creates a tornado using his powers and ends up getting a different car. The next morning after getting the car, Stanley gets approached by two police officers and a newspaper reporter who are investigating the crazy activities, basically being the tornado thing. After they leave him denying everything, Stanley puts the mask back on and robs a bank in order to go to the club, Coco Bongo, which is owned by Dorian. He finally gets into the club to see Tina perform, and this is when the first song happens. And the first song is Hey Pachuco. After the song, he ends up kissing Tina, and Dorian and his gang members come and confront him. And in order to stall them, he ends up doing some sketchy things with the masked persona. The reason why Dorian is confronting Stanley is because Stanley unintentionally foiled his plans of robbing the bank before he had the chance to rob the bank. Stanley gets away, the police come in, arrest Dorian and his men temporarily. After getting away from the club, Stanley decides to investigate the mask and its origins, and ends up finding out with the help of a psychiatrist that the mask is the mask of Loki. Later, he ends up meeting Tina as the mask in a park. And the police show up. After getting chased around by the police officers, he decides to distract them by singing Coop Pete, which leads into singing and dancing police officers. By the end of Coop Pete, Tina reluctantly betrays Stanley for Dorian, and Stanley ends up showing Dorian where the stolen money is, leading into Stanley's arrest by the police. Dorian ends up stealing the mask from Stanley and becomes even more cruel version of himself. After realizing how Dorian is not the right man for her, Tina goes to the station where Stanley is being held prisoner and apologizes for what she did and comes back on his side and they reconcile. After reconciling, Tina informs Stanley about the ball at the Poco Bungo that Dorian is planning and reveals that Dorian is planning on blowing up the club with a bomb. Meanwhile, Milo, missing his owner, probably reads a newspaper and ends up realizing that his owner Stanley is in jail and ends up sneaking into the prison to get the guard's keys and gets Stanley out of the jail cell. Stanley and Milo go to the Cocobongo, where Tina tricks Dorian into wearing the mask, and during that time, Dorian is attacked by Milo, who rips the mask right off his face and delivers the mask all the way to his owner Stanley. Stanley becoming the mask again. And this is where Stanley, Milo, Tina, and one of the police officers end up teaming up to stop Dorian. And they succeed. For some comedy mishaps. After defeating Dorian, the very next day, Stanley, Milo, Tina, and the police officer go to the docks and they get rid of the mask. And we all know where it ends up. In another town.
Hello, this is Jared Jenkins, and here are some
Fabulous factoids!
Today we'll be reading some fabulous factoids about The Mask. The Mask was created by Mike Richardson, the founder of Dark Horse Comics. The Mask first appeared in Dark Horse Presents number 10 in September 1987. He gained the moniker of Big Head in Mayhem number 1, May 1989. The character was inspired by characters like the Joker, the Green Goblin, Freddy Krueger, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Steve Ditko's The Creeper. The Mask's comics were initially published in Mayhem number 1 through 4, and were spun off into their own comic series in 1991. The Mask was a 4-issue miniseries which introduced Walter, a brutish antagonist searching for the Mask. The miniseries was a bestseller, promoting Dark Horse to make a succession of miniseries which concluded in 2000. There are notable differences between the original comic run and the movie. Stanley Ipkiss was a vengeful, neurotic pushover as opposed to a kind, meek, romantic goofball as in the movie, and uses the Mask to go on a killing spree against anyone who slighted him. He becomes addicted to the Mask and verbally abusive, and when his girlfriend Kathy leaves with the Mask, as it was originally gifted to her by Stanley, he breaks into her apartment to steal it and slaughters cops as he escapes. He takes off the Mask and prepares to leave the city, only to be shot in the back by Kathy, who's wearing the mask. There were 12 The Mask comic miniseries, which consist of The Mask Returns, The Mask Strikes Back, The Hunt for Green October, Southern Discomfort, Toys in the Attic, I Pledge Allegiance to the Mask, World Tour, Adventures of the Mask, Walter, Campaign of Terror, Joker/Mask, and Itty Bitty Mask. Many comics that weren't in the main comic continuity took inspiration from the movie and animated series. For the film, filming began on August 30th, 1993 and concluded in October. The Mask released on July 29th, 1994. The film influenced a revival of swing music in the 90s. The Mask would cement Jim Carrey's reputation as an actor and established Cameron Diaz's career. In 1989, Mike Richardson and Todd Moyer approached New Line Cinema about adapting The Mask into a dark horror film. One unused idea was about a mask maker who took the faces off of corpses to put them on teens and turn them into zombies. New Line Cinema gave directing duties to Chuck Russell, as he was at the time known for A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and The Blob 1988. Russell found the comic's violence off-putting and redeveloped it as a family-friendly comedy. Mark Verheiden wrote a second draft in early 1991. Before Jim Carrey landed the role, other actors were considered such as Rick Moranis, Martin Short, Robin Williams, Nicolas Cage, and Matthew Broderick. Russell initially wanted Anna Nicole Smith to play Tina Carlisle, but she was busy with Naked Gun 33 and 1/3, The Final Insult. A costume director recommended Cameron Diaz. The visual effects were done by Industrial Light and Magic and DreamQuest Images. The CGI was supervised by Wes Takahashi, who animated the time travel sequences in Back to the Future and the Boy on the Moon DreamWorks logo. Carrey's daily makeup routine took 4 hours. The costume included fake teeth meant to be used in non-dialogue scenes, but Carrey learned to wear them while talking. In the October 1995 issue of Nintendo Power, they advertised a planned sequel and offered readers a chance via sweepstakes to win a cameo in the film. Carrey bailed on the project, and the winner was given the equivalent cash value of the cameo instead, which amounted to $5,000. A standalone sequel was released on February 18th, 2005, Son of the Mask, the best visual representation of a mental breakdown I've ever seen. The main reason Carrey turned down a sequel was due to his experience on Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, as he was convinced that reprising a previous role offered no challenges as an actor. Peggy Brandstad originally had Dorian hurl her into a printing press before a series of red-stained newspapers get printed with a fake story reporting her death. It was cut as Chuck Russell feared it would be too dark. This is why she disappears from the plot after getting her money. The auto repair shop is the Los Angeles firehouse whose interiors were used for Ghostbusters. Another scene that was cut depicted Stanley getting mugged and having his watch stolen by the same muggers he would later scare with a balloon Tommy gun. The Mask animated series aired August 12, 1995 to August 30th, 1997 for 3 seasons and 54 episodes. It aired on CBS. It was one of 3 animated series based on Jim Carrey movies that began that same year, including Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber. Ben Stein is the only actor to consistently reprise his role across the adaptations. John Arcudi, former writer of the comics, wrote 2 episodes of the series. On August 30th, 1997, there would be a 2-part crossover between The Mask and Ace Ventura, starting with the episode The Ace Man Cometh and ending with Have Mask Will Travel. Walter, despite being absent from the film, appears in the animated series as a goon working for Dr. Septimus Pretorius, a mad scientist voiced by Tim freaking Curry. For the animated series, there are only 3 VHS releases, and a 2-part episode, The Mask is Always Greener on the Other Side, was released on DVD along with the film with the release of Son of the Mask. Shout Factory announced a DVD release of the full series in 2013, but never materialized. Most of the episodes are available via torrenting and on YouTube and Dailymotion. On April 10th, 2018, Warner Archive released Season 1 on DVD, and the full series is available on iTunes and Amazon Video. There are plans for an episode involving the dead spirits of Dorian Tyrell and Nico returning to Edge City to engage in a mob war with plans for Peter Green to return as Dorian. Due to the show's cancellation, this would never come to fruition. Son of the Mask was a highly deserved box office and critical flop, making only $59.9 million against an $84 to $100 million budget. The director, Lawrence Guterman, acclaimed director of Son of the Mask, compared the differences between it and the original film to the differences between Alien and Aliens, a comparison that only Lawrence Guterman would make. The name of the Avery family is a tribute to famous WB animator and Bugs Bunny co-creator Tex Avery, in much the same way that getting blitzed and throwing up at a family member's funeral is a tribute. Jamie Kennedy was hesitant to take the role of Tim Avery, given his minimal screen time as the Mask, and instead wanted to play Loki. Jim Carrey convinced him to take the role. I can only imagine the grudge he's held against Carrey since. Kennedy eloquently described the final project as an ADHD cluster. A video game adaptation was released for mobile phones on February 10th, 2005. Kojima must have been shaking in his boots. Son of the Mask bombed so hard that Dark Horse Entertainment didn't release any Mask-related content for nearly a decade until 2014, with the release of the Itty Bitty Mask comic. The film originally was unrelated to The Mask, as its original title was Baby Formula, originally meant for adults and described as a mix of Rosemary's Baby and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This might remind you of the original idea for the not box office flop, Cool World. New Line Cinema had so much faith in Son of the Mask that they planned 2 more sequels and a prequel, which obviously didn't come to fruition. Working titles for the film were Attack of the Mask and Curse of the Mask. It's definitely a curse, that's for sure. And finally, Derek Wyatt, rest in peace, a character designer for Teen Titans, Ben 10 Omniverse, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, and Transformers Animated, somehow ended up as an animator for this film.
My review on The Mask is fantastic. It's definitely one of the best superhero movies in the 90s. Jim Carrey plays an awesome guy in The Mask. And Karen Diaz, she's pretty good. And that was also her first feature film. So I give it 2 thumbs up.
I gotta say, it was funny. It was funny. Especially when he's playing the Mask part, not the Stanley part.
I mean, you have to keep in mind, like, even though they did use CG, a lot of the facial acting was done by Jim Carrey.
True. But when he played Stanley, the comedy wasn't there. But when he put on the mask and played the Mask, it was wonderful with the comedy.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, I think that was a bit of the point where, like, Stanley was a lot more controlled and held back, whereas the Mask removed a lot of his, like, inhibitions. So he was able to go more all out. The Mr. Hyde to his Dr. Jekyll.
Then you got the villain. And the villain is bad, but when he puts on the mask, he's terrifying.
Yeah. But again, very much so on purpose, unlike Son of the Mask.
Overall, it just works. The music, I kind of enjoy the music. The music is fun.
It's got a nice sort of like swing kind of soundtrack.
Oh yeah. And here's the music soundtrack for The Mask. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Now that was the perfect soundtrack.
As for my thoughts on The Mask, well, it's a 90s comedy classic. I mean, not only is it a pioneer in terms of CGI effects, but again, the CGI effects also work seamlessly with Carrey's natural facial expressions. And I mean, they call him Rubberface for good reason. And they absolutely use Carrey to like the best of their abilities here. I agree that he is more subdued when playing Stanley Ipkiss, but I think that works because it creates more of a contrast between Ipkiss and the Mask. And then there's, of course, you have the famous chick chicky boom scene, which pretty much everyone thinks of when they first think about the Mask.
Alright, I got a random sign here, and it's not about the Mask, it's about its supposed sequel. Son of the Mask.
Get ready, folks.
I mean, come on, okay, for one, Jim Carrey didn't even return.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're not gonna get Jim Carrey, you're not gonna get Cameron Diaz. No, you're just gonna get Randy from Scream.
Hey!
Just severely underacting. If I had to describe this film succinctly, it would be a massive CGI trash pile. The only one that seems to be trying in this film would be Alan Cummings. But, like, even then, they haven't do some of the weird stuff, like, say, the scene in where he dressed up as a Girl Scout. I did not need that imagery.
Oh, please, if you're talking about imagery, how about him with a baby's face?
Well, you have the Avery family, and then like you have Tim Avery and his wife, and so anyway, like their dog Otis ends up bringing home the mask from the original film. Well, I guess I should also explain that, like there's a bit of a scene beforehand, that where Loki is like trying to find the mask, and he comes across a fake in a museum, which is where Ben Stein just happens to work, and this is where you get your first instance of absolute nightmare fuel imagery.
Exactly. When
where
Loki
removes Ben Stein's face.
Exactly, and it looks bad.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like bad. Oh.
Otis ends up finding the mask somehow in a river, despite obviously having some time pass between like, the original and Son of the Mask. Was the mask really just like floating in the river that whole time? But like just conveniently outside Edge City?
I mean, it didn't do well at the box office though, and it got bad reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. I personally, it's not really my favorite movie, but I like the Jim Carrey one better.
Tim is in desperate need of a costume, and for some reason he treats his dog like an absolute king. Yeah, he ends up putting on the mask when he's going to like a party, and again, another instance of accidental nightmare fuel, because for some reason, they don't make him bald as in what they did with Jim Carrey in the original. They give him this, like, this stupid plastic hair, and it's just, like, really weird looking, like, horse teeth.
The song number was just pointless.
It's no chick chicky boom, that's for sure.
It's definitely not Cupid Pete. There was only one song, and it was bad.
Oh yeah, I remember one song in the movie, Freak Out.
Yep.
That was the one at the party. I'm like, oh.
And then for some reason, Tim comes home and, well, he's wearing the mask. And somehow this transmits the mask's powers to the fetus. And the baby has, like, mask powers.
I'll tell you what's also bad. You thought that Milo was scary with the mask on. Otis was even terrifying more.
I always found like the baby to be the most terrifying thing about the film. I have no idea how they netted Bob Hoskins for the role of Odin.
Loki!
Well, what is awful about the Son of the Mask is it's just the storyline made absolutely no sense.
Oh, and then there's also the fact that Loki literally turns their neighbor. He turns her head into like a giant nose which sneezes.
Yeah.
Which again was an image that has always stuck with me ever since I first watched the film as a kid.
Son of the Mask was so bad that we all had something to say about it. Son of the Mask was nightmare fuel to my soul.
Probably one of the worst movies of 2005.
If I were to describe Son of the Mask in one word, it would be.
And now for my top 5 Jim Carrey movies. 1. Bruce Almighty. 2. Liar Liar. 3. Dumb and Dumber movies. 4. Sonic the Hedgehog movies. And 5. Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Hi, this is Jared Orr speaking. I have a guest who is going to talk about movies. Is Brad Russ.
It's a pleasure being here.
Oh, as always. So, Brad, what's your favorite movie?
Fast and Furious series.
Very nice. And what do you like about this movie?
Fast cars, edge of your seat thriller, like all about, 10-second cars, hashtag ride or die.
Oh, very nice then. What is your favorite character from the Fast and the Furious movies?
Character is Dominic Toretto.
Nice. I like him too.
He, of course, is a popular street racer, organizer in helping a team. He lives a life a quarter mile at a time, and for those 10 seconds or less, he's free.
Oh, yes. And one thing he said, family.
And where he don't have friends, he has family.
That's right. What scene from the Fast and Furious franchise stood up to you?
Where Vin Diesel, that plays Dominic Toretto, says, "You know, one thing about street fights is that the street always wins."
Oh, that's one of the best quotes from Fast and the Furious 7. Who's your favorite actor of all time and why?
From the series, the late Paul Walker,
Oh, me too. He's the best.
especially where he drives up and says, "I thought you couldn't leave without saying goodbye."
Oh, yes, that's true. Especially the song, See You Again.
Where his character, that Walker plays, Brian O'Connor, drives to one side leading to the gates of heaven, and of course, his, character that was more than a friend to him, treated him like a brother, drove to his own journey.
Oh, yes. That was a beautiful scene, though.
Yes, it was.
What movie would you suggest for the audience?
The movie I'd suggest to the audience and the movie lovers out there in the world is Fast and Furious series. As long as, children are accompanied by adults, because it does contain scenes that isn't suitable for all viewers.
Oh, yes. That could be true. Yeah, especially the new Fast and Furious 11 comes out in, I think, 2026.
Now, lately, I haven't been updating on the latest feature and who'll be casting and starring in it. And
That's right. We wanted to thank Brad for joining us for our episode.
anytime.
I give The Mask 5 masks out of 5. But as for Son of the Mask, I give it exactly 0 nightmare-inducing CGI babies out of 5.
I give this mask a 9 out of 10. It has lots of comedy, love, dancing, good CGI, action, and good acting. And Son of the Mask, I give it 1 out of 10, which features a lot of babies.
I give this movie 7 out of 10 dancing police officers. I think, our dear viewers, you should watch Jumanji. The original Jumanji.
My movie suggestion for the audience is to go watch Barbie. I mean, the characters are well done now. The story's really good. Margot Robbie played a good Barbie. Ryan Gosling is funny as Ken. Michael Cera is also awesome as Just Alan. Kate McKinnon is funny as Weird Barbie. And all the other actors are pretty much well done. Yeah, and it made so much money at the box office for 4 weeks. If anyone doesn't see Barbie, go see this movie immediately.
I recommend the 1988 remake of The Blob, which was also directed by Chuck Russell and written by Frank Darabont. Not only is it a awesome remake of a culturally important but admittedly very dated film from 1958, but it manages to be much more terrifying by transforming what was once a a mindless blob monster into a genuinely terrifying and malicious beast. Now this blob, it can actually think. We would like to thank you all for your support. This wouldn't be possible without you. Thanks.
Keep watching for more movie reviews.
Please leave a comment down below if you have any other suggestions of things you could review.
My name is Jared Jenkins.
My name is Jared Oram.
And my name is Vince Marion.
And we are the Critical Three. Come on, party, let's go party. Yeah. Come on, party, let's go party. Whoa, whoa. Come on, party, let's go party. Yeah. Come on, party, let's go party. Whoa, whoa. Do.
Oh, I love you, Ken.
Cut.